We're going to start off a real basic introduction on Stream. Stream gets launched from an icon. The icon on your desktop can have a workspace identification in the property, in which case it launches directly into a specific workspace, which is a set of data or a database. If there's no workspace identifier on the command line when Stream gets started, it pops up a list of the workspaces that are available. We'll use config here, which is one of my testing areas. Then when StreamV comes up, it will either auto log in if you have that enabled, and I'll show you how to enable that a little further down the road, or it comes in with a login screen. Your login screen requires your user ID and a password. The password is case sensitive. Passwords can be configured on the system to either be free form, or they can have certain requirements, uppercase, special characters, minimum lengths, certain expirations. Those are policies that you can set in order to make the passwords more painful as required. Once you've entered your password, you click login. It's a two-step login in a sense that if the user is allowed to change things like the division they're working in, the year, default location, date, department, period, or language, these fields are available. If the user is not allowed to, then the fields are not available, and you can just press continue to finish the login. There's a checkbox here called Auto Start Views. If that checkbox is checked, then when you log into the system, it will automatically restart all of the views that you had when you logged out the last time. So if you constantly go into 3 or 4 views, it saves you having to pick them from the menu, and you can just auto start them. At this point, while the focus is on continue, you can also change your password, and on the bottom of the view, it shows various pieces of information. This section right here shows you where your user home directory is. It shows you where the program's loaded from. It shows you version information. And this field down here can be set by the system operator and allows them to put a message of the day. In the case of OFM, we got a snowstorm, we're closing down early today, be done by 3, or whatever the daily message is. If you're a system operator, this field on the bottom shows up and lets you set various debug levels. Once you continue, you are in the application. Now, it prompted me for my initials because I am for my login information based on my initials, because I'm logged into the system in Windows as a different user. If I was logged into Windows as Frank, and then I went in with my initials, and this field in the user record was filled in, it would then auto log me into Stream, so that I would not have to go through the login process first on Windows and then on Stream. That's auto login. If you're in a domain, your domain name goes here. If you're not in a domain, then the domain that Windows defaults to is called unknown DNS. So that is the auto login feature. Looking at the operator information that you log in, your initials, whether or not the operator is active. If they're not active, they can't log in. First name, last name, then the information that they default to, the division they're operating in, department, accounting year, period, their default location, and whether or not the operator is allowed to change this information. Normally, this information here, division, department, year, is picked up from the current system information, and the operators don't change it. Certain accounting people will be allowed to change the year and period that they work in. There's a checkbox to allow you to change the date to a non-system date. This is usually only allowed for system operators or accounting people. You have a default printer for your session. Your option level. Option level 9 means you're system operator. Anything less than that, you're not a system operator, and different security settings can be set based on option level. The default language. Then we have groups and branch. The system is based on 4 levels of control as far as features, security, and policies are concerned. The most specific level of control is based upon who's logged in. The least specific level of control is based upon what the global settings are. And in between, you can have operators associated with either groups and or branches. A group is something like accounting, sales, warehouse. A branch is normally a facility. If you have multiple facilities and the behavior of the system should be based upon what facility you're in, you can set the facility code there. It's an alphabetic code. So if a user belongs to groups A, B, and C, they would have A, B, and C in their group field. Groups are also called roles. Then the operator has a phone number, an email address. We talked about the auto login feature. Here's the password date. This tells you the last time the password was changed. And if you're using password expiration, it will expire a certain number of days after that. If you're a system operator or you have rights, you can get to the operator management view. When you're in the operator management view, you can look at an operator's login history. This shows you when they've logged in, when they logged out, how long they were logged in for. You can also look at their activity history. This shows you all of the different places where this operator has been to, the different panels and views, and how long they were in there, and various information about how they entered the view, if it was a query, if it was a drill down. These are mainly used for auditing and tracking purposes. So that's the operator manager. Every user on the system needs to be set up as an operator. If no one wants to jump in on any operator questions, we'll move over to the menu system. When you come in with a start button, which is the module menu. The modules are in alphabetical order: accounts payable, receivable, you can all read them. Process automation is used for EDI. Open My Cove folder just opens up Windows Explorer in the folder where documents are written to by the stream user, or you can start another session. If you start another session, it will automatically log you in. So if you're in order entry and you need to look something up and you're in a point where you can't get out, you can click start another session. If you have two things going at once, you can run multiple versions of Stream. As soon as you pick a module, it then opens up an additional 4 or 5 menus. These menus are pretty much standardized on operations, lookups, reports, and maintenance, and they pull down to give you your various options. To the right of that, you have the most recently used menu. This menu is maintained by the system based upon what views you've gone into, and it normally keeps about 20 of them on there. So if you close something and want to go back into it, you can go over to the most recently used menus and pick it. So for example, we can go to customer management here, which takes us to exactly the same place as if we would have gone off of the menu system into customer management. To the right of the most recently used is the My Cove menu. The My Cove menu lets you put menu options on it that you would like to have all for yourself so that you don't have to go through multiple menus. For example, somebody in accounts payable would like to have access to the customer management view so they can put it on their My Cove menu instead of going through the regular menu system to get there. Next to the My Cove, and you add things to the My Cove menu by opening a view. Let's say, for example, we'll open project management here, and we want to add it to My Cove. We go down here and say add current view to My Cove. Now I'm a systems operator, so it will ask me which operator I want to add it to. If you're not a system operator, it just adds it to your own menu. And it tells you what it did. So now if we look at the My Cove menu, we'll see we've got project management on it. Next to the My Cove menu is the My Group menu. The My Group menu is similar to the My Cove menu, except that it is available to everybody within the particular group. So if I were to take an item like opportunity management and add it to my group, it asks me which group I want to add it to. And now anybody in group A, which I'm not part of, would see opportunity management. Role E is used by larger companies that need to track what rights what users have, in that you put role exceptions onto that menu. My example earlier of accounts payable normally does not have access to customer management. If in a particular situation somebody needed to have access to that, you would add it to the Role E menu, and then when you produced an audit report for user rights, it would show that Mary in accounts payable, in addition to having all of her accounts payable functionality, has an exception, would have access to company management. The Windows pull down is just for managing your screens. You can minimize all of your windows. You can restore your windows. The only thing that I've ever seen anybody use is to pull this down if you have a lot of views opened and you've lost track of which view is where. This will give you a list of the views that you have, so you can click on the view and bring it to the forefront. If you have multiple monitors and you disconnect one, or if you access your stream from different devices that have different monitor sizes, you can have situations where something will be either completely off of the screen or stuck in a corner. You can hit the ShiftHome key, which will bring it back to the upper left-hand corner. So if you click on a menu option and nothing appears, there's a good chance that it's off the side of your screen somewhere. So hitting ShiftHome will bring it back to your visible portion of your screen. Then the last option here is the Help option. The Help option lets you go to our system documentation. We're in the process of revising our system documentation. This is the new version. I'll show you how to get to the old version. The first thing you see is our update listings. On a daily basis, we record changes we've made to the system, and they show here in reverse date order. So you can say, oh, something's changed on receiving. What happened? And here you can see the recent editing history of the receiving program. Sysops will frequently look at this to see if there's something new that will entice them to do an update. If you want to look at documentation, this is the new documentation system. You can also go to the older version of the documentation. The new documentation is a work in process. The older documentation is older, but still has some useful information in it. One of the nice things about the new documentation is the wildcard search or full text search. So you can say things like email invoices, and this shows you everywhere there are documents for emailing invoices. So it's easier to search. The new help system, the older help system has the links are more stable. The links in the new system are not fully completed yet. So if you look for something, easiest way is a full text search here, or you can go through the table of contents and find documentation. Additionally, on the help system, you can go to our website where there are application notes and things that you may want to look up. There's a lot of information here. You can send a support note. You can reset your preferences. Resetting preferences is primarily window positions. If you have something that's off the screen or a panel that's too small, you can reset your preferences here, and that puts everything back to a clean system. You have refresh user control policies. This is something you'll use fairly rarely. But an example, for example, at OFM, if a user needs a policy change, they call their Sysop, Hank, and say, can you change this for me? Hank changes it. Instead of having to log out and log back into Stream to get the new policy behavior, they would just refresh user controls, and then the system will behave the way they expect it. You can select skinning. If your system has skinning turned on, you can select different types of skins, which change the look and feel of Stream with colors and fonts and shapes of objects. So that's the menu system. Any questions on the menu system? Okay. The next thing under the menu is the toolbar. If you highlight an item on the toolbar, you'll get a tooltip. This is adding a record, which is the same as hitting the insert key. This is deleting something. This is save. Clear. If you have a form, it clears the form. This is changing the sort sequence. For example, here we have a list of customers. We can say we want to change the sort sequence from company to account number. Now, the shortcut to do this on a list is you can also click on one of the headers of the list. This is a search button, allows you to search in a list. This is a full text search. Let's say we're looking for Dallas. I only have one company in Dallas. Let's look for a different one. Let's look for somebody that has the word direct somewhere in their customer record. So we've only got one Adirondack Direct. Let's see if we can find somebody who's a little Oh, computer, we should have some. Okay, these are all the customer records that have the word computer somewhere in their customer records, and then you can select one, and that takes you to it. The microscope is zoom. We're a list-based product. When you're on an item, you can drill down into it with either the zoom tool button or right-clicking on it and selecting zoom. Both of these will get you to a detail panel. This is expand. It looks a little bit like a Salvador Dali painting. Expand means show me additional information about something, or prompt. In the case of a company, when you hit expand, it's going to show you the contacts. If you're on an invoice, it's going to show the invoice lines. If you're on an order, it'll show you the order lines. If you're on a catalog record, it'll show you the warehouse locations. If you're on a warehouse record, it'll show you the bin location. So it's basically show me additional information. This one here is the query button, and that's a little complex, and we'll get to that on another training class, but it basically allows you to execute context-sensitive queries where you can execute a query based on where you are currently on the screen. This is the imaging button. Let's go back over to companies. Go to Bay Area. And you notice as I change companies here, the buttons highlight. When they highlight, that means there are images and there are comments associated with this record. And this holds true for orders, invoices. All of these lists behave the same way. We can look at images associated with this. This is telling me this is the first time I've used it with this user, so it's going to copy an icon to my desktop. And it just created this icon here. And this shows me all of the images that I have associated with this customer record. I could double click on an image and I can display it. I don't have any, I believe, set up in my development area, but we'll add one. So I'll hit insert. Now it would allow me to scan an image, or it allows me to import it. So let's do an import, and then we'll go look for some images. Okay, so here's an image I just imported. And I can say display it. So here it's displaying the image for me. To validate that it's the image I want, I can give it a title, and then I say save. So now this image is available with this customer record. Images can be attached to any types of documents in the system. Customers, orders, invoices, contacts, projects, incidents, jobs, anything. I can look at comments. Now, if you notice, I clicked on that and it didn't show up. It actually showed up somewhere on another screen. So there, I hit ShiftHome, and there it is. We can have an unlimited number of comments. Each comment can be, in this system, they're configured up to 64,000 characters. It's up to your system's operator how big the comments can be. When you add a comment, it gives you a couple of choices. You can either add a general comment, and those comments are numbered 1 through 999. So you can have up to 1,000 general comments attached to a customer record or other document type, or you can set up specific named comments that are reserved for specific things. For example, here's comment 2001, which is an order entry comment. So if you put this comment in here, whenever we go into order entry for this customer, this comment's going to pop up. And you have other comments, places where you store credit information, collections information, special shipping instructions, a comment for this customer that should show up on the packing list, a comment for this customer that should show up on the pick list and invoice, or just on the invoice. So you have ways of storing notes that you want to show different people in the company during operations. Then moving on, so our print button, in the case of a company, it prints us a company information sheet, which a salesman may take with them visiting a customer. We email. This just allows us to email the customer and it prompts us for text. If you are on an invoice lookup or an order lookup, then emailing would allow you to mail a copy of that invoice or that order. The 3 dot is the More menu. You have on any view, you have the toolbar options, you have the context menu right-click options, you have the buttons for things that you use frequently, and then you have the More menu, and the More menu is where we put additional things that we don't want to clutter up the context-sensitive menu or the buttons. So the More menu has additional functions on it. The gear is for configuration. Configuration is primarily used in these lists, and we'll get to that shortly. And the information button just gives you various help information that you can use.
Quick question, this Mark. Um, as far as the email, are you using the mail server for the user, or how are we sending sending and receiving emails through the system?
Okay, emails are sent out using whatever SMTP server the system is pointed to. In most cases, if you have an in-house Exchange server, it'll point to that. If you're using Outlook.com or Microsoft Office 365, then it points to Microsoft's Exchange server. It does not go through the local users Outlook or MAPI, because Microsoft keeps changing the spec on that, and we'd have to have a different version for every version of Outlook. And for people that don't use Outlook, they wouldn't have access. So it goes out using standard SMTP. And you can point to it wherever you want. Okay. We have 2 types of screens. I can go to Recent here and look at Operator Manager. And the 2 types of screens are either a list-based or a form-based. 99% of the operational production screens start off as list-based, and the maintenance screens tend to be more form-based because they're used by a very limited number of people infrequently. So the whole system is primarily list-based. This type of list is called a browse. The browse has a couple of components. It has columns, it has rows, and most browsers have what are called a line detail panel. The line detail panel allows you to display more information about whatever item you're on without having to endlessly widen this, because we all have a limit on how wide our monitors can be. So we allow you to show more information about the highlighted view down here. Now again, as in nearly everything else, this is all site configurable. So if you're a system operator, you can configure it by going into the line detail, hitting F3, and then putting together what's called an expression that's evaluated so that you can show anything that you want there. If you want to see additional information on there, you just have to go to your Sysop, and your Sysop will then set it up. This can either be information from the current record, or it can be nearly anything. You can execute SQL queries, you can execute a number of different things every time you change highlighted records to show any sort of information that you want. It's a very, very powerful feature. So those are the two primary sections of the browse. Then you'll have hard-coded buttons under the browses, and frequently to the left side, you'll have function buttons. These function buttons are dedicated on a site-by-site basis to perform specific functions that frequently occur at that site. Contact your Sysop for more information. The browsers have multiple columns. The columns can be changed both site specifically and user specifically. So you can have different data on your customer management screen or any other view based upon your company or based upon your preferences. The order entry people may want to have different information on their company list than the accounts receivable people. Accounts receivable may be interested in seeing last payment. Order entry salespeople may be interested in seeing last sale. Additionally, you can change sequences. We've defaulted this to company. I'd like to sort it by account. So you can either click on the A to Z, or you can click on the header and then select account. Now, one of the things that we do that's a little unusual is when you change sequences, it moves whatever you're sorting by to the left-hand column, because we feel that's a more natural way of displaying the information. And then whatever column you're sorting by, you can then search. If we want to search for customer 1023, we can just start typing and get to that customer record. We can also click the search button, and then we can type in there 1669, for example, and get to that customer. So the common searches or sequences that we have for company are company, zip code, account, a secondary company name, state, phone, rep, and alternate account number. If you're searching for something and it's not there, you can always do a wildcard search, and you know that, oh, I don't have that. Now, if you notice here, this phone number had 2223 in it, and it didn't find it. That's because on a site-specific basis, your system operator can set up what fields in the data record the full text search actually searches. I believe the city is in there. There we go. We've got one person in Naples. We got a bunch of people in Miami. So if you don't have a sequence you can search by, you can always search using the full text search. And again, it depends upon how your Sysop has it set up. For example, this one on my development system, I've got it set up that it also searches the addresses. And you see I found the Computer Den because they have 3008 in their address. So we talked earlier on the toolbar about the configuration. For a browse, like I mentioned earlier, you can change column width, you can change search sequences. As you change sort sequences, not only does the sort column move to the left, but it also changes what columns are displayed. So if you notice here, by account, it shows high balance. If I switch to company, I have the current balance amount, but not the high balance amount. So we can add and subtract or add and remove columns by highlighting the column, going over to the tools and say remove column. We can go back and we can say insert column, and let's add let's add their default currency. So it's very easy to customize your displays to what's relevant for the user looking at it. And again, the displays can be customized either user specific or company-wide or by branch or group. Additionally, we can do things, let's put a number on here. Let's sort this by name. We'll look for CBAL amount. This happens to be the current balance amount. So here you see it has no pennies. Now for salespeople and others, the dollar amounts are meaningful. However, if you're an accountant, you may say, I want to see the exact amount. So you could go here and change the column mask to 2, and now you would see pennies. So it allows you to change various column display information. You can insert a column, append a column, remove it, change the title, change the mask. The make column smaller is used if you have a situation where you have a really wide column that you've set up and you're now working on a smaller screen and you only see one column and you can't get over to grab it and make it thinner. You can use the make column smaller and it will then make the column smaller so that you can work with it. So do we have any questions on the browsers or on the lists, on their behavior, how to use them, anything like that? Okay.
Can you show how to take a column off?
Sure. Let's remove the currency column here. We'll highlight currency, put the cursor in the currency field, go to here and say remove column. Now, one of the downsides of removing a column is the column widths are stored based on the column number. So when you remove a column, you have to get your column width set up again the way you want them. And then you click up here and say remember column sizes. And since I'm a Sysop, I can say I want to make this change global for the current user or group. Is that where you wanted, Mark?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. If we've gotten, then you also have, when you're on a column, you have various options. One of the options you have is column help. And what column help does is displays the data dictionary record for that column, telling you the internal name, the title, the type, the length, a description from Stream, and you can also have a house help description that the Sysop can set up. So if you have a field that the system doesn't use for anything specific and you have certain policies that describe how you want the field to be used, you can add that as help on a site-specific basis. From a list, you always have options. Again, context menu or button-based. The button options are pretty obvious. Invoices, orders, incidents, returns, their profile, quotes, this type of stuff. Here you see the invoices for the customer. The toolbar is the same, except in this case now, if we click on one and say email, the system now allows us to email that invoice to the customer. It has a default text, which is normally done on a site-specific basis. You can select additional people to send it to: customers, vendors, manufacturers, reps, operators. You can add additional body attachments. If you're not running Outlook 365, but you're running a local-based Outlook, you can also move the email over and edit it in Outlook. Then off of our invoice, we can drill down again. An example of toolbar use, we can zoom. This gets us the invoice detail. We can expand. This gets us the invoice lines. We can drill down again with zoom and keep going deeper and deeper. In addition to the buttons on every list, we have context sensitive help. Context sensitive information or options. We can do zoom to look at the company detail, expand for context, column help I showed you. We can copy the field of the line to the clipboard, and we can look at various other things. But we'll just zoom into a company. We'll look for Bay Area Systems. And most of the time you can zoom in also by double clicking on a line. Again, you see the toolbar has now had various things disabled. Functions that you can't use are shadowed. Functions that you can use are still bold. Most of the panels have more information than will fit on a single panel. So we have what are called tab dialogues that you can move in between. Then where additional information is available, a prompt list, you can click on the prompt and get a list of options for a field. You'll notice here there's no prompt list enabled, there's no button. That's because there's been no limitation set up for the territory field. If you hit F3, which is the prompt fast function key, it'll tell you that there's no table set up for this, and a Sysop could set up a table if you wanted to limit the number of things that could be put into the territory field. Then any particular field that you have, this field has been shadowed, which means that the users are not allowed to get to it. A field can have three states. It can be editable, it can be shadowed, which means it's view only, or the field can be set that the user can't see it. So certain users may not be allowed to see certain fields. Costs usually is one of them, margin is another one. So they can be set to be non-viewable. In this case, the credit limit is set that the current user can't access that field because they're not authorized to change the credit limits on a customer. Additionally, you can look at any field and you can see the field help, and you get to that by right-clicking in the field. And this gives you an explanation of what the field does. Again, you can have house or company specific information. When you right-click, you can also look at data change history. Data change history tells you what prior values of this field were, when they were changed, and who changed them. So if you wanted to see if there were any prior changes to risk level for this customer, you could go into the change history. Additionally, if you're a system operator, you can edit the field label and change it to something else. You can set a different default, the mask, and the security. If you're not a system operator, these last four fields don't appear. Every panel will have this funny little box up here, which is called additional record information. And what that does is just tell you a little more about the record, when it was entered, who entered it, the time, when it's last been revised, who revised it, at what time, and what the internal record number is. Instead of adding all these fields to every screen, we just have this little custom icon that has that available information. So that's our panel. We can move between different dialogues that all have more information. This is an example of user fields. These are fields that Stream does not use itself, but are available for use on a site-by-site basis, and they can be named. So for example, here you could have a field. We'll take this one and we'll change the field label to call it relation to owner. So we can say this company here, their relationship to the owner of our company is it's their brother. So any additional information you want to store, you can store in these fields and you can name them. In the case of the customer, we've got ship tos. A different training session will go over the customer records and such in detail. But you can see that that's how you get through the information, is with the tab dialogues. So that concludes the first 50 minutes of it. I'd like to open the last 10 minutes to questions or anything that anybody would like me to specifically address in this session.
You mentioned about queries. Is that something we're going to cover later on, or?
Yes, there'll be a whole separate session just on queries.
Oh, okay.
So they're very powerful and useful, but they're used by a fairly small percentage of the population, and everybody else will fall asleep if they're not interested in it.
Okay. Another question I had was on printers. Are we able to print to web-based printers or what we call soft printers? Like
we print through the Windows print mechanism. So wherever you can point a Windows printer to, we can print to.
Okay, very good.
So you can print to PDFs. You can print to fax servers. You can print anywhere you can route.
As long as you have a print driver, basically.
Yeah, as long as there's a Windows print driver for it. Okay. Well, if we don't have any other questions, we'll conclude this. And if there's anything you'd like me specifically to address that we missed today, as sort of a general overview, send me an email and I will cover that when we start tomorrow, looking at some of the important tables in the system, customers, catalogs, ship tos, inventory, this type of stuff. Otherwise, thank you for joining, and I will talk to you guys another day.